Are your D&D players not role-playing? Do you put them in scenes and they just stare back at you? Your issue might be that you haven't set the stage correctly. I tend to think of social encounters in D&D as various categories, each with different functions and virtues. When a DM leans into one of these categories, a game emerges and the players are pulled into the roleplay. So to help you out, let me break down what I consider to be D&D's 8 different types of social encounters, what they're for, what they're about, and how you can deploy them in your game. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where we finish the series we started, eventually. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for 11 years. You start the adventure in a tavern. All the players describe their characters, a tavern swain takes their orders, and then they, go roleplay. This is the platform, an open stage where the DM steps back to let the players all embody their characters in a manner they find fun and appropriate. Everyone does some fairly innocuous chatting amongst themselves, just being their character, maybe doing a voice or talking in third person. But the scene isn't about anything in particular. If you're not used to thinking in terms of social encounters, this may be how you treat most talky scenes. But in screenwriting terms, this isn't a scene. It's the kind of stuff producers make you cut because it doesn't further the plot or the story, which are two different things. But also the reason many people rag on starting in a tavern. It's a lot of pressure to put on your players. The onus is on them to be interesting, and that can be a lot. Don't get me wrong, I love to platform my players, especially when they've been playing as these characters for a while. It gives them an opportunity to just be. That can be great. I've spoken about that before in this video on rendering scenes. But it's not exactly a social encounter. There's no drama because it has neither an intention or obstacle. Intention and obstacle are screenwriting terms. They refer to character motivation. An intention is something a character wants. An obstacle stands in their way. I want to convince the king to lend us his army. Intention. But the king doesn't want to put his soldiers in danger. Obstacle. These scenes are great for when the party takes watch in the middle of their hex crawl, or when they wind down at their local tavern to engage in drinking games or gambling. And when you pull off a good platform as a DM, you're in heaven, because you just get to sit back and watch. But that makes this one of the harder scenes to pull off, because the best platforms have a certain story baked in. They're moments of reprieve in the middle of intense adventures. The Night's Watch where a strange noise was heard out in the forest, and now the characters can spend their platformed scene theorizing about what lurks in the forest. Or heading into the final boss battle, knowing the odds are stacked against them, and the characters grapple with their mortality. Having just heard the king declared war, and now they wonder how everything is going to change. Those are great platforms because they have a topic to discuss. But again, no intention, an obstacle. The opposite of a platform is a scene with no fluff, all tension. This is the negotiation, where the heroes must convince an NPC to give them something the NPC doesn't want to part with. Draw Steel has mechanics for negotiations, and we did a video on how they work. I've tried them and found them useful. But you don't need a system to do this, you just need to understand how the NPC thinks and what value they believe in. The heroes want the king to lend his army, but the king doesn't want to risk his soldiers' lives. Okay. Can we convince the king his soldiers are in more danger if they aren't sent to fight a threat today, but wait to let it fester? This is a proper social encounter because there is a win and lose condition. Can you get the king's soldiers or not? Win or lose? Doing these scenes requires us, the DM, to imagine the characters complexly to see if we can't convince them. How do we convince the king? Well, we must make him believe that helping the characters is actually in character for his motivations. But how do we know what the king wants? Well, maybe he explained himself before the characters met him. That would be the monologue. It's a Greek term that comes from monos, meaning alone, and logos, meaning speech. Alone speech. I'm doing one right now. I'm just going on endlessly. Blah, 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 blah. Am I right? Who's this guy anyway? The king might have delivered a big monologue to his people, telling them that he won't send his soldiers into battle to fight wars in foreign countries and that sort of thing. That's a form of exposition, meaning to explain something to the audience, in this case your players. So what is the purpose of a monologue? It's a way to explain something, sure, but in gameplay terms, it's kind of like a little clue to give your players. Did they pay attention to the king's speech starring Colin Firth? Did they understand the subtext? If they did, they're likely to understand that convincing the king to send his men into danger won't work unless they can appeal to his motivation. A good monologue contains actionable intelligence, something that will illuminate the world or the characters within, and informs the players so that they can make an informed choice later. A villain monologue is kind of a classic DM mortal sin. because in most cases the villain monologue happens at the end of the adventure. The players rush into the final boss room, catch the bad guy off guard, and the Babi casts some DM fiat spell that freezes the players in place, while the Babi explains why they did all that villainous stuff in the first place. But that blows, because once the villain's done bloviating, we're all gonna beat the snot out of them. So who cares what the Babi says? It won't change anything. Maybe you're running a villain like Zariel from Descent into Avernus, and you realize there's a chance to redeem her. Then, a villain monologue might open that door. Did the players listen to the villain monologue and understand why redemption is an option? But if the monologue won't change anything, cut it. It doesn't matter. But catching the villain monologuing before the end of the adventure gives us a chance to hate them early and look forward to beating them up later. That's great stuff. Do that. But the monologue isn't the only way to do exposition. I think there's 3. Let's talk about option number 2, the clue, which is kind of hidden in another scene. Sometimes I'll run a social encounter for my players that feels like a platform or another type of scene, but it is actually a small clue. The goal is to get out a specific line of dialogue that's going to be illuminating. I'll have a dialogue with the player, making sure the NPC is putting the player in a bit of a rush about their actions, the purpose of the scene being to set the stage for the player. But then I'll slip in, we're running out of time. The shape of the next decade will be decided in the next 12 hours. And now they're going to be on high alert. They know that I, the DM, said that because I was making a point about what tonight's session was about. But more innocuous examples work too. At one point, I remember the players walking into a tavern with an NPC who'd been there before, and when he ordered food, he asked what was on offer. The tavern keep said they had rabbits, and the NPC said, "Conies? Heavens to Betsy, are they brownstones?" I said that because I knew I was about to reveal that Brownstone would be found dead later that session. Sometimes these are hugely important too. I remember doing a whole introduction in a one-scene flashback for this spy character that had been mentioned several times but never seen. In this flashback, the spy character said about a disreputable thug, "Without someone like him, we'll be fighting this war again in 2 decades. That is a big hint at what kind of game I'm running. One about war, yes, but also one about working in grey morality. This way, it's a little mini-game. Did you spot the clue? So, 2 ways to do exposition, monologue and clue. But what about the one scene where everything comes together? The big lore dump, which is another type of scene often complained about online. Or DMs worry about this, wondering if their lore dumps are just insane and boring and go on forever. Well, I got good news and bad news. Bad news is this, that's a real danger. You've got to be careful. But the good news is better. Exposition can be dramatic. Good exposition fucking slaps. I can't tell how often I've started explaining something and my players all go, "Thank God, yes, please, tell me more." So how do I do it? Well, I'll show you. It's the same thing I'm doing right now, the exact same trick. It's really not that complex when you think about it. You see it, don't you? I ask the question first, and then I let them stew. In session 3, I have someone say, "I've always wondered why wizards live in towers." And then I routinely describe wizard towers, or towers without wizards, or dance around the subject in general, and the players will remind each other of the line. Or maybe they're just thinking of it. Or maybe I'll just repeat it. Have a wizard ask themselves, "Why did I build a tower? I hate stairs." A dramatic question without an answer. And then I deconstruct the answer, basically using the Socratic method. Instead of having an NPC that knows the answer, I have an NPC that almost knows the answer. They're so close. And the scene is the NPC explaining everything they understand, while the players contribute everything they've heard that the NPC doesn't know yet. And together, they Socratic method each other in a Pepe Sylvia style manic insanity where they piece the information together. Now, we're having fun piecing a mystery together ourselves, slowly creeping towards an answer. It becomes an encounter, a game where piecing the puzzle together. This video is brought to you by Legend in the Mist's new campaign setting, Hearts of Ravensdale. If you're not familiar with Legend in the Mist, they released digitally in August 2025 and it was the top rated game on DriveThruRPG, getting more 5-star reviews than any other game, including Daggerheart and Cosmere. And while you can play Legend in the Mist in any setting, it comes with its own rustic fantasy setting, Hearts of Ravensdale. This is the first full setting and campaign book for their game. It includes 30 new tropes and 120 new theme kits, cooking and crafting rules, and over 70 creatures of Twilight with incredible backstories to discover. And incredibly, 7 new rustic adventures in Dalish, which can be played as either one-shots or whole campaigns. Download the Hearts of Ravensdale campaign book today and dive into this rustic fantasy setting. Once you've gotten all the exposition out, there comes a special kind of different social encounter, the plan, where everyone carefully crafts a plan that will inevitably collapse. I don't make the rules. You draw out what the bad guy's castle looks like, and the players make a plan for how to deal with it. At higher levels, I remember outlining Tiamat's war plans. The players wanted to hatch a scheme on how to kill her. These scenes are frequently just the players talking amongst themselves, but I do find it to be a bit better with an NPC along for the ride. Someone to point out the things they might have missed, or maybe explain the intricacies of something their characters would or should know. Or to be honest, someone who can usefully serve as a quest giver. Players say, and then we teleport into her lair, and the quest giver NPC can say, it's technically its own demiplane, but there is an entrance within the city of Pearlhampton. This gives me a chance for that sort of yes, but improv, where the players can't win the encounter in the planning stage, but instead they get to prep a fun adventure in the planning stage. Because I'm there to make sure it's a fun adventure ahead. It also helps them from getting too stuck on something that would just be unfun. This is a great way to plan an adventure together with your players. They tell you what they want to do, and you find a way to communicate the stakes of every decision, allowing them to choose their own adventure. And then you know what kind of stuff to prep. Then obviously, as the plan starts, you throw a few wrenches in the works to make sure there are more informed choices along the way. This is a blast, and it's how I ran most of my 17th level plus adventures in my last big campaign. The introduction is for showcasing a character through a particularly enlightening circumstance. When you've got a moment to really hone in on a character, who they are, what they mean to the adventure. It's a mix of scenes I've talked about so far, but it is the most powerful one. In our video on rendering NPCs, I talked about the revolutionary Celia Powell and her charge on the Obsidian Palace. That sort of scene can introduce an NPC in a powerful way, but you might wonder where the social encounter is in that? I think it exists, much like in exposition scenes, to find out how the players respond to the information given. A good introduction is a look into a character's very being, who they really are. That's good intel. When you introduce someone important for the first time, you can make that scene memorable by putting them in high contrast situations where they can pop. They're arguing or getting heated, or better yet, about to do something drastic. Maybe the players find an orc belonging to the enemy faction dying in the forest. What do we do about him? How does he react? Maybe they find someone about to die for a cause when they could live to fight another day. Maybe they find a bad guy who doesn't want to fight and could be redeemed. How does that go? Those first introductions can be so tense and so exhilarating, and the good ones will be remembered for the whole campaign. You paint the character in this illustrative color, and the introduction remains in their head the entire time. That's who the character is, and the character remembers the players based on how they reacted to that introduction, setting the stage for the rest of the game. One last social encounter, although this is more of a roleplay moment. I call it the illustration. Basically, the point of the story, the period, or full stop. In Save the Cat, a phenomenal book on film structure, this is called the final image. And it is the question of the movie's point. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the heroes ride into the sunset. The end, right? That's one kind of final image. But you can do this in the middle of a session to end the scene. As you continue to talk long into the night, the crescent moon looks to glow blue overhead, and a chill wind comes down from the mountains. Harsher seasons are upon us, but you knew that already with the declaration of war that had just passed the Parliament. That's about Kingmaker. This is a little way to segue into the point of a scene. I once ran a series of murder mystery adventures. Each session started with a monologue going, "Underneath a cloudy sky, rain falls on the streets below," or "Snow falls on the streets below," because it was set in my fantasy version of Victorian London. So obviously the weather was perpetually crap. They don't call England Old Blighty for no reason. Good God. But when I ran the last session of the last of those adventures, I said, for anyone walking the streets, they see a clear day that marks the end of monsoon and the start of summer. And with it the rain stops, the clouds part, and rays of brilliant sunshine shine over Blackguard. And that felt like the end of the entire series because of the imagery I just described. Obviously, this list of social encounters isn't a checklist or even a complete list. You could do all kinds of scenes with all kinds of points or games or encounters baked in. I'm not saying this is the list. I'm saying you can make your scenes easier to roleplay, easier to engage players by making there be a point to the scene, making the scene be about something, Add a little intention and obstacle, or colorful imagery, or turn it into a planning game or an exposition game. Make it fun to roleplay to get your players to engage with the story by making the way to engage be obvious from the get-go. It invites the players in. I spent a while trying to figure out on what to call this video on the third pillar of play, combat, exploration, and 5e tells me this is called social encounters. At first I wanted to call it roleplay, but that's nonsense. You roleplay in every pillar of the game. It's all roleplay. Then I thought dialogue, but a lot of these types aren't dialogue because that's two people talking. And one of those types is a monologue, which is one person. Social encounters sound so rough to me for some reason, like it's a sparring match or a fight. But I think it really is the right way to think of this type of scene. When next you're stuck on how to make a talky scene interesting, think to yourself, can I turn it into a social encounter? See if that helps spark something in your noggin. But if you find yourself in the middle of a talky scene and it doesn't seem to have any dramatic weight to it, and you want to get some in there, see if one of the types I talked about here can elevate it. Ask yourself, is this a platform, negotiation, monologue, clue, lore dump, plan, introduction, or illustration? And see whether that can help some meaning emerge. Or failing any of that, you can just stick a silly little guy in there and do your best silly little guy voice for the, hidden cheat code scene, the comedy. Being the DM is just being on the hook to play the silly characters so you can make your friends all laugh. Because when drama fails, you can always just slide into comedy like a slide whistle and make it seem like the failure was on purpose. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend. Yes?
Excuse me.
What?
Excuse me.
All our patrons get access to our Discord, a digital magazine, monthly rule PDFs, a whole catalog of extra videos, newsletters, and anything else I stick on there. If you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.